What if I told you that one of the most feared conquerors in history didn't just rely on horses and swords, but on burning birds and plague-ridden cows? Genghis Khan. The name alone stirs images of unstoppable cavalry and brutal sieges. But behind the legendary battles lies a tactic so bizarre, so shockingly effective, that it sounds more like myth than reality. He weaponized animals. Imagine standing behind your city's massive stone walls, feeling safe, untouchable. Then, over the horizon, you see flocks of birds, cows, and even snakes flying straight toward you. Not dead, not harmless, but burning, diseased, weaponized to destroy your home from within. This wasn't random chaos, it was cold strategy. One of the earliest records comes from the sieges in Persia and China. Genghis Khan and later his successors like Hulagu Khan perfected a terrifying new method: biological and psychological warfare using animals. First came the birds. The Mongols would capture local birds, doves, ravens, anything that nested in the city. They would tie cloth soaked in flammable resin to their legs, set it ablaze, and release them. In a panic, the birds would fly home, to rooftops made of dry wood and straw. Within minutes, fires would erupt across the city. Roofs ignited. Chaos spread faster than any army could march. And the defenders? They were too busy trying to save their homes to hold the walls. But fire was just the beginning. The Mongols also catapulted carcasses of cows, pigs, even human corpses, rotting and riddled with plague, over the walls. They didn't just want to breach defenses, they wanted to poison the wells, spread disease, and shatter morale. Imagine standing guard and seeing a burning bird or diseased cow hurtling through the air at you. It wasn't just horrifying, it was hopeless. And yet this wasn't madness, it was precision warfare. The Mongols understood what many of their enemies didn't. Walls could be broken not just with force, but with fear. But just how effective were these gruesome tactics? And could anything stop them? For the people trapped inside besieged cities, there was nowhere to run. The walls they thought would protect them became their prisons, and the animals, their doom. The burning birds weren't just random chaos, they were strategic terror. Entire cities, made mostly of wood and straw, would go up in flames within hours. People choked on smoke. Families fled burning homes. Defenders abandoned the walls. Not because they lost courage, but because they lost everything worth defending. And the disease tactics? Even more devastating. Imagine a rotting cow riddled with plague hurled over the walls into the marketplace. The stench alone would drive panic. But the true horror came days later, when sickness spread like wildfire. Fever, boils, death. There were no hospitals, no antibiotics. If disease took hold, it could wipe out a city faster than any army. The Mongols didn't invent biological warfare, but they perfected it on a scale the world hadn't seen before. And they didn't stop with animals. Reports tell of the Mongols launching not just birds and cattle, but captured soldiers, prisoners of war, and even corpses of their own dead. Anything they could use to poison, to terrify, to break their enemies' will. It wasn't about killing every defender. It was about crushing hope. The brilliance of Genghis Khan's tactics was simple. He made walls useless. Why waste time on siege towers and battering rams when you could turn a city against itself? No wonder the Mongol conquest spread faster than almost any empire before or after. They didn't just win battles. They dismantled the very idea of resistance. But was this the limit of Mongol ingenuity? Or did they have even darker tactics hidden in their arsenal? What made the Mongols truly terrifying wasn't just their brutality, it was their creativity. Genghis Khan didn't believe in fighting fair. He believed in fighting smart. Beyond launching burning birds and plague-ridden cows, the Mongols mastered psychological warfare on every level. They would leave entire cities untouched, not out of mercy, but to spread stories of their terror. Survivors would flee to nearby towns, carrying tales of horror, skies filled with fire, rivers poisoned, plagues running rampant. The next city would often surrender without a single arrow fired. Their siege techniques were adaptable and ruthless. They dammed rivers to flood cities. They built fake soldiers, mannequins on horses, to appear larger in number. They set up elaborate night attacks filled with noise, fire, and drums, designed not to kill, but to terrify. Genghis understood. Break the mind and the body follows. Even their diplomacy was a weapon. Offer surrender once, and if refused, no mercy would follow. Cities that resisted were often wiped off the map entirely, their populations erased, their names forgotten. This wasn't mindless violence, it was systematic terror, a form of warfare so advanced for its time that even modern strategists study it today. And if you've made it this far, you can probably feel just how deep and ruthless their methods ran. If you're fascinated by how history's most powerful forces operated, don't forget to subscribe. We dive into the stories you won't hear anywhere else. But here's the real question. Where did Genghis Khan learn to wield fear so effectively? Was he a natural-born strategist, or was he shaped by something even more brutal? To understand how Genghis Khan became a master of psychological warfare, you have to look at where he came from and what he survived. Born as Temujin on the harsh Mongolian steppes, he grew up in a world where survival wasn't a right. It was a daily battle. His father was poisoned by a rival tribe when Temujin was still a boy. Overnight, his family was abandoned by their clan, left to starve and fend for themselves. As a teenager, Temujin was captured by enemies and enslaved. He wore a heavy wooden collar around his neck to mark him as a prisoner. But he didn't break. He escaped, and he remembered. Life on the steppe taught him that loyalty was rare, betrayal was common, and weakness was fatal. When he rose to power, Genghis Khan didn't just build an army. He built a machine based on the brutal lessons of his youth: fear, loyalty, and absolute control. Every general he promoted earned their place through merit and fear of failure. Success was rewarded lavishly. Failure was punished swiftly, sometimes with death. His laws, known as the Yasa, were clear and brutal. Steal from your fellow soldier? Dead. Disobey an order? Dead. Break ranks in battle? Dead. There was no room for hesitation or mercy. Genghis Khan wasn't just waging war against enemies, he was waging war against chaos itself. In a world where betrayal had cost him everything, he created an empire built on iron discipline and fear. And that fear extended beyond his own people to every nation that stood in his way. But Genghis Khan's story doesn't end with burning birds and brutal discipline. What happened to his empire after his death? How did his descendants carry forward, or twist, his ruthless legacy? When Genghis Khan died in 1227, he left behind more than just an empire. He left behind a blueprint for conquest. His descendants, men like Kublai Khan and Hulagu Khan, expanded on his terrifying methods. Hulagu led campaigns in the Middle East, famously sacking Baghdad in 1258. Kublai Khan conquered all of China, founding the Yuan dynasty, and they didn't abandon the tactics that had made their grandfather so successful. If anything, they amplified them. Cities were still set ablaze. Disease was still a weapon. Fear remained their sharpest sword. But over time, something changed. As the Mongol Empire grew richer and more complex, the brutal efficiency that had once defined them began to erode. Luxury replaced hardship. Politics replaced unity. And the once unstoppable Mongol war machine began to splinter. The Mongols had taught the world that fear could conquer, but they also proved that fear alone couldn't sustain an empire forever. Today, the Mongols are remembered with a mix of awe and horror. They were visionaries of warfare, unflinching in their tactics, relentless in their ambition. They reshaped continents, and the echoes of their conquests still ripple through history. And perhaps the most chilling lesson Genghis Khan left us is this: true power doesn't just destroy cities, it breaks the human spirit. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe. And while you're here, check out some of our other videos. You'll find even more hidden stories that history books left behind.